My name is Clara, and for most of my life, I believed that honesty was enough. I thought if you worked hard, treated people with kindness, and stayed loyal, the world would reward you. I was wrong. At 53 years old, I learned a painful lesson that changed my life forever. For almost 7 years, I worked for one of the wealthiest families in town. Their mansion stood on a hill overlooking the city. It had marble floors, crystal chandeliers, beautiful gardens, and more rooms than I could count. To most people, it looked like a dream. To me, it was simply home. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise. I cleaned the rooms, prepared breakfast, watered flowers, and helped keep everything perfect. The family trusted me, or at least, I believed they did. Richard was the father, a serious businessman who rarely smiled. Victoria was his wife. She loved expensive jewelry and collected rare watches. And then there was Ethan. Little Ethan. The bright light of that house. He followed me everywhere, asking endless questions and making me laugh when I felt tired. Sometimes he would bring me flowers from the garden and proudly say, "These are for you, Clara." Those small moments made my work feel special. For years, everything was peaceful, until one terrible morning. That day started like any other. I was cleaning the upstairs hallway when I suddenly heard Victoria shouting. Her voice echoed through the house. Everyone rushed to her room. She looked frightened. "My watch is gone," she said. At first, nobody seemed worried. People lose things all the time. But this wasn't an ordinary watch. It was a gold watch worth thousands of dollars. More importantly, it had belonged to her late grandmother. She treasured it more than anything. The entire house was searched. Every drawer, every shelf, every room. But the watch was nowhere to be found. Then Victoria looked at me. Not at Richard, not at Ethan. At me. A strange silence filled the room. My stomach tightened. "I didn't take it," I said immediately. But no one answered. Hours later, Richard called me into the living room. His face was cold. Victoria stood beside him. Ethan hid behind the couch, looking confused. Then Richard spoke words I will never forget. "We trusted you, Clara." My heart sank. "But until the watch is found, we cannot keep you here." I felt like the floor disappeared beneath my feet. I tried to explain. I begged them to believe me, but they had already made their decision. Without proof, without evidence, without a single reason except one. I was the servant, and they were the owners. That was enough. An hour later, I stood outside the mansion carrying a small bag. 7 years of loyalty had been erased in a single afternoon. No goodbye, no apology, nothing. Just suspicion and silence. That night I slept on a park bench. The cold wind cut through my clothes. I stared at the dark sky and wondered how life could change so quickly. Yesterday, I had a room. Today, I had nowhere. Yesterday, I was trusted. Today, I was a thief, at least in their eyes. The next few days were even harder. I searched everywhere for work. Restaurants, shops, hotels, markets. Most people ignored me. Others looked at my worn clothes and turned away. One man laughed when I asked if he needed help. Another told me to leave before customers complained. Every rejection felt like another stone on my chest. I began losing hope. Maybe my life would never recover. Maybe this was how my story would end. But life has a strange way of surprising us. One evening, while sitting alone near the park, I heard someone shouting my name. "Clara," I looked up. A woman was running toward me. It was Victoria. She was breathing heavily, and in her hand was something golden. My heart stopped. The watch. The missing watch. She reached me and held it out. Tears filled her eyes. "We found it," she whispered. "It was behind the living room chair the whole time." For a moment, the world became silent. All the suffering, all the humiliation, all the lonely nights, because of a watch that had never been stolen. Victoria apologized again and again. She told me Richard felt terrible. She told me Ethan cried every night. Then she asked me to come back. "You can have your room back. You can have your job back. Please come home." Home. The word hurt more than anything, because the moment they stopped trusting me, it stopped being home. I looked at Victoria for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive her immediately, but another part remembered the cold bench, the hungry nights, the feeling of being abandoned. Trust is like glass. Once broken, it never looks the same again. So I shook my head. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And then I walked away. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't go backward. A few blocks later, I noticed a small bakery. Warm light glowed through the windows. Fresh bread filled the air with a sweet smell. Inside stood a woman arranging pastries. Her name was Grace. For some reason, she smiled the moment she saw me. Not the smile people give out of politeness. A real smile. A kind smile. I asked if she needed help. She studied me for a moment. Then she said something I will never forget. Everyone deserves a second chance. She offered me a small job cleaning the bakery. The pay wasn't much, but there was also a tiny room behind the shop where I could stay. That night, I slept in a small bed. It wasn't luxurious. The room wasn't beautiful, but it felt safe. And for the first time in days, I slept peacefully. Weeks turned into months. The bakery became my new home. Grace and her husband Daniel treated me like family. They never questioned my honesty. They never looked down on me. They simply trusted me, and slowly, I began trusting myself again. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I looked through the bakery window and saw Ethan standing across the street. He had grown taller. When he saw me, his face lit up. He waved excitedly. Beside him stood Victoria. She looked older somehow, sadder. For a few seconds, our eyes met. Then they walked away. Neither of us said anything. But that night, I received a letter. It was from Victoria. Inside were pages filled with apologies. She wrote about regret, about guilt, about how Ethan still talked about me. At the end of the letter was one simple request. Please visit us someday. I spent hours staring at those words. Part of me wanted to ignore them, but another part remembered little Ethan, the child who had never doubted me. A week later, I finally decided to go. When I arrived at the mansion, everything looked the same, but I felt different, stronger, wiser. Victoria opened the door. Ethan ran forward and hugged me tightly. I nearly cried. We spent the afternoon talking in the garden. There were apologies. There were tears. There were memories. And something else. Peace. Not because the past disappeared, but because I finally stopped carrying its weight. As the sun began to set, I stood to leave. Victoria asked if I wanted to stay. I smiled gently. No, I said. My home is somewhere else now. And for the first time, those words felt true. Because sometimes losing everything helps you discover who truly values you. Sometimes betrayal leads you to kindness. And sometimes the worst day of your life become the beginning of a better one. My name is Clara, and this is the story of the day I lost a job, but found myself.